Chapter 1. An Ancient Salon by Victor Hugo from the book Les Miserables. When M. Gillenormand lived in the Rue Servandoni, he had frequented many very good and very aristocratic salons. Although a bourgeois, M. Gillenormand was received in society, as he had a double measure of wit, in the first place that which was born with him, and secondly, that which was attributed to him. He was even sought out and made much of. He never went anywhere except on condition of being the chief person there. There are people who will have influence at any price, and who will have other people busy themselves over them. When they cannot be oracles, they turn wags. M. Gillenormand was not of this nature. His domination in the royalist salons which he frequented cost his self-respect nothing. He was an oracle everywhere. It had happened to him to hold his own against M. de Bonald and even against M. Bengipai Valet. About 1817, he invariably passed 2 afternoons a week in a house in his own neighborhood, in the Rue Férou, with Madame la Baronne de T, a worthy and respectable person, whose husband had been ambassador of France to Berlin under Louis XVI. Baron de T, who, during his lifetime, had gone very passionately into ecstasies and magnetic visions, had died bankrupt during the emigration, leaving, as his entire fortune, some very curious memoirs about Mesmer and his tub, in 10 manuscript volumes, bound in red morocco and gilded on the edges. Madame de T had not published the memoirs out of pride, and maintained herself on a meager income which had survived no one knew how. Madame de T lived far from the court, a very mixed society, as she said, in a noble isolation, proud and poor. A few friends assembled twice a week about her widowed hearth, and these constituted a purely royalist salon. They sipped tea there and uttered groans or cries of horror at the century, the charter, the Bonapartists, the prostitution of the blue ribbon, or the Jacobinism of Louis Roman XVIII, according as the wind veered towards elegy or dithyrambs, and they spoke in low tones of the hopes which were presented by Monsieur, afterwards Charles X. The songs of the fishwomen, in which Napoleon was called Nicolas, were received there with transports of joy. Duchesses, the most delicate and charming women in the world, went into ecstasies over couplets like the following, addressed to the federates. Refonces dans vos culottes labout d chemis qui vous pend. Quonen dispoc les patriots en arboré el drapeau blanc, 20. There they amused themselves with puns which were considered terrible, with innocent plays upon words which they supposed to be venomous, with quatrains, with distichs even. Thus, upon the de Saulles ministry, a moderate cabinet, of which MM. Decazes and Desera were members. Pour raffermir le trône ébranlé sur sa base, il faut changer de sol, et de serre de case, 21. Or they drew up a list of the Chamber of Peers, an abominably Jacobin chamber, and from this list they combined alliances of names, in such a manner as to form, for example, phrases like the following, dames. Sabrin, Gouvion Saint Cyr. All this was done merrily. In that society they parodied the revolution. They used I know not what desires to give point to the same wrath in inverse sense. They sang their little sa ira. Ah, sa ira sa ira sa ira, les Bonapartistes à la lanterne. Songs are like the guillotine. They chop away indifferently, today this head, tomorrow that. It is only a variation. In the Fualdes affair, which belongs to this epoch, 1816, they took part for Bastide and Jogen, because Fualdes was a Buonapartist. They designated the liberals as F. Reens and brothers. This constituted the most deadly insult. Like certain church towers, Madame de T's salon had 2 cocks. One of them was M. Gillenormand, the other was Comte de Lamothe Valois, of whom it was whispered about with a sort of respect. Do you know, that is the Lamothe of the affair of the necklace. These singular amnesties do occur in parties. Let us add the following. In the bourgeoisie, honored situations decay through 2 easy relations. One must beware whom one admits. In the same way that there is a loss of caloric in the vicinity of those who are cold, there is a diminution of consideration in the approach of despised persons. The ancient society of the upper classes held themselves above this law, as above every other. Marigny, the brother of the Pompadour, had his entry with M. le Prince de Soubise, in spite of, no, because, Du Barry, the godfather of the Vaubernier, was very welcome at the house of M. le Maréchal de Richelieu. This society is Olympus. Mercury and the Prince de Guémené are at home there. A thief is admitted there, provided he be a god. The Comte de Lamothe, who, in 1815, was an old man 75 years of age, had nothing remarkable about him except his silent and sententious air, his cold and angular face, his perfectly polished manners, his coat buttoned up to his cravat, and his long legs always crossed in long, flabby trousers of the hue of burnt sienna. His face was the same color as his trousers. This M. de Lamotte was held in consideration in this salon on account of his celebrity, and strange to say, though true, because of his name of Valois. As for M. Gillenormand, his consideration was of absolutely first-rate quality. He had, in spite of his levity, and without its interfering in any way with his dignity, a certain manner about him which was imposing, dignified, honest, and lofty in a bourgeois fashion, and his great age added to it. One is not a century with impunity. The years finally produce around a head a venerable dishevelment. In addition to this, he said things which had the genuine sparkle of the old rock. Thus, when the King of Prussia, after having restored Louis Roman XVIII, came to pay the latter a visit under the name of the Count de Ruppin, he was received by the descendant of Louis Roman XIV, somewhat as though he had been the Marquis de Brandenburg, and with the most delicate impertinence. M. Gillenormand approved. All kings who are not the King of France, said he, are provincial kings. One day the following question was put and the following answer returned in his presence. To what was the editor of the Courrier Français condemned? To be suspended. Sus is superfluous. Observed M. Gillenormand remarks of this nature found a situation. At the Te Deum on the anniversary of the return of the Bourbons, he said, on seeing M. de Talleyrand pass by, "There goes His Excellency the Evil One." M. Gillenormand was always accompanied by his daughter, that tall mademoiselle, who was over 40 and looked 50, and by a handsome little boy of 7 years, white, rosy, fresh, with happy and trusting eyes, who never appeared in that salon without hearing voices murmur around him, "How handsome he is! What a pity! Poor child!" This child was the one of whom we dropped a word a while ago. He was called Poor Child because he had for a father a brigand of the Loire. This brigand of the Loire was M. Gillenormand's son-in-law, who has already been mentioned, and whom M. Gillenormand called the disgrace of his family.